In the brutal world of Westeros, where kings rise and fall on the edge of a sword, one boy's short life ignited the deadliest war the Seven Kingdoms had ever seen. Joffrey Baratheon wasn't just a spoiled prince turned king, he was a walking catastrophe, a blend of cruelty, cowardice, and unchecked power that left scars on everyone he touched. From slicing open a pregnant cat as a toddler to ordering the execution that sparked rebellions across the realm, his story is a masterclass in how absolute power corrupts absolutely. And by the end, when poison turned his wedding feast into his funeral, millions of fans around the world breathed a collective sigh of relief. If you've ever binge-watched Game of Thrones or devoured A Song of Ice and Fire, you know Joffrey is the villain who made your blood boil. But how did a child born into luxury become the most despised ruler in history? What twisted him so early, and why did his death feel like justice served? Stick around as we trace every step of his poisonous path, from his tainted birth to that infamous last gasp. We'll pull from both the books and the show, highlighting the key differences, so you get the full picture without any spoilers skipped. Let's dive in. Joffrey entered the world in 286 AC, right in the opulent halls of the Red Keep in King's Landing. On paper, he was the legitimate heir, the first son of King Robert Baratheon and Queen Cersei Lannister. With his striking golden hair, pouty lips, and piercing green eyes, Jon Snow thinks that Joffrey looks like a girl. He carried the unmistakable stamp of House Lannister, though that detail would later unravel everything. The dark secret at his core, Joffrey wasn't Robert's blood at all. He was the result of Cersei's forbidden affair with her twin brother, Jaime Lannister. This incestuous truth stayed buried for years, but it poisoned the family from the inside out. Robert, the absentee father, spent his days hunting boars and drowning in wine, barely acknowledging the boy he thought was his. Robert is deeply disappointed with his son, and feels little affection for him, nor did he like the fact that Joffrey would always cry whenever he picked him up. Cersei, meanwhile, smothered Joffrey with fierce, overprotective love, shielding him from any real consequences and feeding his sense of superiority. Signs of trouble showed up early. As a small child, Joffrey displayed a chilling fascination with violence. In the books, there's a notorious incident where he caught a pregnant kitchen cat and, driven by morbid curiosity, used a knife to cut it open and pull out the unborn kittens. He proudly showed the mess to his father, expecting praise from him. Instead, Robert exploded in rage, striking Joffrey hard enough to loosen teeth and even joking about parading the dead cat before the small council as a warning. Cersei dismissed it as harmless boyish exploration, but those who witnessed it knew better. This wasn't innocence. It was the first hint of a sadistic streak that would only grow. Robert's open disdain, calling his son weak and whiny, only deepened the boy's resentment and his desperate need to prove himself through cruelty. This made him very stubborn and unpredictable. Joffrey had no real peers to play with, just servants who obeyed and guards like the Hound, Sandor Clegane, whom he idolized for his brutality rather than any heroism. While Sandor is widely known as the Hound, Joffrey refers to his guardian as Dog. The prince can be vengeful, and Lord Tywin Lannister finds his grandson's decisions to be very foolish. By 298 AC, Joffrey was 12 in George R.R. Martin's novels, though the HBO show aged him up to about 16 for dramatic effect. That's when King Robert hauled the royal family north to Winterfell, aiming to appoint his old war buddy Ned Stark as Hand of the King. It was there that Joffrey crossed paths with Sansa Stark, an idealistic 11-year-old who dreamed of chivalrous knights and fairy tale romances. To her starry eyes, Joffrey fit the bill perfectly, handsome, princely, and full of courtly charm when it suited him. The two were betrothed on the spot, a political move to bind houses Baratheon and Stark even tighter. At first it seemed promising. On the journey south along the King's Road, Joffrey courted Sansa with rides and stories, making her heart flutter. But the mask slipped during a fateful stop at the Trident River. Stumbling upon Sansa's younger sister Arya sparring playfully with Mycah, a lowly butcher's boy, Joffrey saw an opportunity to assert dominance. He drew his ornate sword, Lion's Tooth, and began taunting and threatening the unarmed Mycah, enjoying the fear he inspired. Arya intervened, striking Joffrey with a stick, and her direwolf Nymeria bit his arm in defense. Humiliated and bleeding, Joffrey fled in tears. The fallout exposed his true nature. Back at camp, Joffrey spun a web of lies, claiming Arya and Mycah had ambushed him without cause. Sansa, caught between loyalty to her sister and her betrothed, gave a muddled account that didn't help Arya. Robert, ever the pragmatist, wanted to brush it off as youthful squabbling, but Cersei pushed for retribution. With Nymeria escaped into the wild, they settled on killing Sansa's blameless direwolf lady as a substitute. And the Hound was dispatched to hunt down Mycah, returning with the boy's mutilated body. In both books and show, this event shattered Sansa's illusions, revealing Joffrey as a liar and bully. The show amps up his petulance, showing him whining over a minor wound, while the books emphasize the political ripples that foreshadow greater conflicts. While drinking with Ned Stark at the Hand's tourney at King's Landing, King Robert openly despairs of his son and heir. revealing to his old friend that he has often thought of abdicating. The only thing that stops him is the thought of Joffrey sitting on the Iron Throne with his mother whispering in his ear. Tragedy struck soon after their return to King's Landing. Robert embarked on an ill-fated hunting trip, orchestrated by Cersei with plenty of strong wine to ensure mishaps, and was gored by a boar. As he lay dying, he urged Ned to guide his son, Joffrey, wisely. With Robert gone, the 12-year-old ascended the Iron Throne amid whispers and schemes. Ned, having uncovered the incest through ancient lineage books that proved Baratheon black hair always dominated, confronted Cersei and offered her a chance to flee with the children. She refused. Following Robert's death, Joffrey summons the council and commands that they make arrangements for his coronation as Lord of the Seven Kingdoms. When Ned produces Robert's will, which declares Ned regent and mentions the heir, rather than specifying Joffrey as heir to the Iron Throne, Cersei tears it up and advises Ned to swear fealty to her son. Ned in turn reveals that Joffrey has no claim to the throne and that his uncle, Lord Stannis Baratheon, is the true heir. But Ned Stark is quickly arrested for treason and Joffrey took over the throne. Joffrey's reign began with a bang that echoed across the continent. Further during the court session, Sansa, to whom Joffrey is still betrothed, kneels and begs for him to spare her father Ned's life, asking Joffrey to do this for love of her. Joffrey promises Sansa that he will be merciful. At Ned's public confession on the steps of the Great Sept of Baelor, extracted to spare his daughters, Joffrey overrode his mother's plan to exile Ned to the Night's Watch. Grinning with malice, he demanded Ned's head instead. Sir Ilan Payne beheaded the honorable lord with his own sword, ice, sparking immediate outrage. This rash act is against his family's wishes to minimize further bloodshed and restore the king's peace, and leads to the intensification of hostilities. Ned's son Robb Stark was proclaimed king in the north. Stannis and Renly Baratheon both staked claims knowing the truth of Joffrey's parentage, and the War of the Five Kings erupted. This impulsive act, identical in books and show, marked Joffrey as a tyrant who valued spectacle over strategy. As king, Joffrey wielded power like a blunt instrument, ignoring counsel and indulging whims. With Tywin Lannister away at war, Cersei and manipulators like Peter Baelish tried to steer him, but he rebelled constantly. He reforged Ned's sword into 2 new blades, naming one Widow's Wail for its dramatic flair. Sansa, now a captive after their betrothal ended, became his favorite target. He ordered his Kingsguard to beat her publicly for Robb's victories. Bruises and humiliation detailed more intimately in Sansa's book chapters, shown graphically on screen. Joffrey has Sir Meryn Trant of the Kingsguard strike Sansa on his behalf, though interventions from Tyrion and others spared her the full brunt. He also forces her to look at severed heads on the walls of the Red Keep, including those of her father Ned Starr and Septa Mordin. Joffrey threatens to force Sansa to look on her brother Robb's head when he kills him, as he boasts, in single combat. Sansa briefly considers pushing him to his death, but relents. Arya Stark, incognito in the Riverlands, includes Joffrey in a list of those she wants dead. Joffrey's sadism extended to the masses. During food shortages sparked by the war, riots gripped King's Landing. In the books, Joffrey responded by firing crossbow bolts into crowds of starving beggars from the castle battlements, killing several for amusement. The show softens this but adds invented horrors, like a scene where he torments 2 prostitutes sent by Tyrion, forcing them to abuse each other under threat of death. Tyrion, arriving as acting hand, clashed with his nephew repeatedly, slapping him in meetings to curb outbursts, earning Joffrey's undying hatred. The books portray Tyrion's mix of contempt and pity for the boy. The show heightens their antagonism for tension. The Battle of the Blackwater Bay tested Joffrey's mettle, and found it lacking. Stannis' fleet assaulted the city, met by Tyrion's devastating wildfire trap that lit the bay in eerie green flames. Joffrey boasted of leading the charge, but fled to the safety of the Red Keep at Cersei's command when the fighting intensified, demoralizing his troops. Tywin's timely arrival with Tyrell allies turned the tide, a sequence mirrored closely between books and show. To cement the new alliance, Joffrey jilted Sansa for Margaery Tyrell, who navigated his ego with expert flattery, pretending to share his bloodlust during hunts and crossbow sessions. In the show, a tense bedroom scene has Joffrey eagerly showing off his weapon to her, hinting at his volatility. Sansa Stark informs Olenna Tyrell, Margaery's grandmother, of Joffrey's cruel personality, and the Tyrells plan to wed Sansa to Margaery's brother. Tywin Lannister, however, quickly arranges for Sansa to marry his son Tyrion. King Joffrey gives Sansa away during the wedding ceremony, though he discreetly touches her breast while doing so. When Joffrey announces it is time for the bedding custom, Tyrion outrages the king by threatening to geld him in defense of his new wife. Joffrey is delighted when he hears of Robb Stark's death at the Red Wedding, and wants his head so he can serve it to Sansa at his own wedding, in addition to wanting to show no mercy to the Northern and River Lords who surrendered following Robb's death. It all culminated at the Purple Wedding, Joffrey's marriage to Margaery, a lavish affair in the Great Sept followed by a feast with 77 courses, performers, and a mocking dwarf joust that humiliated Tyrion further. Joffrey received widow's wail as a gift, used it to slice open a massive pigeon pie, then gulped down wine from a shared chalice. Joffrey Baratheon died on his own wedding day, in the year 300 AC, only minutes after marrying Margaery Tyrell. The event is known to history, and to fans, as the Purple Wedding, because of the colour his face turned while he was dying. How did Joffrey Baratheon die? Joffrey was poisoned with a rare and extremely deadly substance called the Strangler. The poison was made from crystals dissolved in wine. Once swallowed, it acts in seconds. It causes the throat to swell shut, turns the victim's face red and then purple, makes the eyes bulge, and leads to violent choking and convulsions. Death usually comes within a minute or two. During the wedding feast, Joffrey took several large gulps of wine from a massive ceremonial chalice. Almost immediately he began coughing, dropped to his knees, clawed at his throat until his fingers were bloody, vomited, and collapsed. He died in his mother Cersei's arms, foaming at the mouth and pointing accusingly at Tyrion Lannister with his last strength. In the books the description is even more graphic. His eyes turn blood red, his neck swells grotesquely, and he literally tears chunks out of his own skin trying to breathe. Who was responsible for Joffrey's death? The plot was masterminded by two people working together. One, Olenna Tyrell, the Queen of Thorns. She was the one who physically dropped the poison into Joffrey's wine cup. During the feast, while everyone was distracted by the dwarf jousters and the arrival of the huge pigeon pie, Olenna reached over and casually adjusted Sansa Stark's hairnet, a gift from Dontos Hollard. One of the purple crystals in that hairnet was actually a capsule of the Strangler. She palmed it, then slipped it into the wine when Joffrey set the chalice down near her for a moment. To Peter Baelish, Littlefinger, he planned the entire assassination and supplied the poison. Littlefinger smuggled the Strangler crystal into King's Landing, inside the hairnet he had given to Sansa through his agent Sir Dontos. His motive was to remove an unstable king, frame Tyrion Lannister, whom he hated and wanted out of the way, and create chaos that would allow him to whisk Sansa away and eventually gain control of the Vale and the North. Margaery Tyrell knew nothing about the plot. Olenna deliberately kept her granddaughter in the dark so she would not be implicated. Cersei wrongly blamed Tyrion, which led to his arrest and the famous trial by combat later on. So in short, Joffrey choked to death on the Strangler at his own wedding feast, murdered by Olenna Tyrell and Littlefinger in one of the most coldly calculated and satisfying assassinations in the entire series. In the midst of the confusion at the wedding, Sir Dontos Hollard, the drunken fool-turned-rescuer, appeared at Sansa's side, grabbed her hand, and whispered the words she had been waiting weeks to hear, "If you want to live, come with me now." Sansa didn't hesitate. She let him pull her through a hidden servant's door behind a tapestry, down a narrow staircase, and out into the foggy night of the Red Keep's Godswood. Dontos had a cloak ready to throw over her distinctive hair and dress. From there they hurried to the outer yard where a litter was waiting. She climbed in, heart pounding, still hearing the distant chaos of the wedding feast. Minutes later she was carried through a postern gate, down to the muddy banks of the Blackwater Rush, and onto a small boat that took her straight to Littlefinger's ship anchored in the bay. By the time Cersei realized Sansa was missing, she was already rowing through the darkness toward the narrow sea, free of King's Landing for the first time since her father lost his head. Joffrey perished at 13 in the books, 17 on screen, his brief rule remembered as a time of terror. His corpse lay in state, serene in death, while the realm grappled with the fallout. Tommen inherited the throne, far more malleable but no less entangled in the Lannisters' web. Joffrey's legacy is one of destruction, shaped by neglect, indulgence, and a rotten secret. Martin crafts him as a tragic product of his environment, a frightened child lashing out, while the show amplifies his psychopathy for maximum impact. Either way, he remains the ultimate cautionary tale, a boy king who turned privilege into poison. What do you think? Did Joffrey ever stand a chance at being decent, or was he always headed for that gruesome end? Share your take in the comments below and let's debate, books or show, which version of Joffrey was more terrifying. If this breakdown hooked you, give it a like, subscribe for more deep dives into Game of Thrones lore, and hit that bell for notifications.